Here's the big question. How do you create your most authentic, successful, and fulfilling life? The Fresh Blood podcast studies the stories of people over the age of 40 who are thriving in life, finding those core golden threads that connect the underlying successes, those universal truths. I'll be your host, Jolie Downs. Listen and learn from the stories of others to help you soar and live the life that you were meant to thrive in. Today, we are speaking with Wes Tankersley. Wes has a multifaceted career. He is an entrepreneur owning Tanks Custom Golf. He is a salesman in the window coverings industry, and he is the podcast host of Shaping Success Network. Wes also has that coach mindset, having spent time as a health coach, a baseball coach, and a football coach in his past. I'm really excited to learn more about his story. Wes, thank you for joining us on Fresh Blood. Please, could you tell us more about your journey to getting where you are today?
When you start talking about that, it's kind of interesting because I feel like there's so much there, but there's more. And I was just like, man, I've done a lot of things.
Yeah, and that didn't even, cover everything, right?
Yeah. Nope. Yep. Yeah. So I grew up in Ontario, Oregon. I was actually born in Salinas, California, but we moved when I was 10 to Ontario, Oregon, which is, I'm in Boise, Idaho now, which is about an hour away. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up there. I went to high school there. I played football in high school. I was a 3-sport athlete. Got a scholarship to play football.
Oh wow, nice.
I just I was over it. I was over it. My parent, I was over football. Yeah. I was over all that stuff. I thought that I was better than I was. I got a scholarship to a really small school. My parents wanted me to go there. And I didn't want to take a third tuition scholarship when I thought I was a full ride guy at a Pac-10 school, not an NAIA school. So I was wrong. But
this is really interesting because I know a lot of people like this. So did you not take it then? What did you do?
It's a funny story because when we moved to Oregon when I was a kid, I wanted nothing more than to be back there. That's all I wanted. We left my family. All my family was down there. All my extended family. We were really close. Hard. We spent a lot of time together. And so I graduated. Southern Oregon University was a college I was going to go to. It's in Ashland, Oregon. And I just figured, you know what? I'm going to go spend the summer with grandma, and then I'll go register for classes when summer's over. And then I'll head back to Ontario, grab my stuff, and move into the dorm because I was going to do it, And I met my wife. So
that summer.
Yeah. I met my wife that summer, and I was like, this is more than one reason for me not to do this. And I didn't want to do it, and I didn't want to go to school there. I didn't like the school, but my parents just said, in order to be successful, you got to go to college. And you need to go there because they're going to pay for part of it. And I was like, nope, I want to go to Hartnell. And play football there at a junior college so that I can go play at a Pac-10 school. And I'm like, nope, well, you can do that, but you're going to do it on your own. And it's expensive for out-of-state tuition in California if you're out of state. I mean, Hartnell is, at that time, I think it was probably like $2,000 a semester, and I didn't have $2,000. This is, 20-something years ago. And so I had met my wife, and I kind of just decided that I did need to go to college, and they told me, you're going to go to University of Idaho if you want to go, if you want our help. And I was kind of like, well, what do? I'm kind of in between a rock and hard space here. I could figure something out, or I could just go do that. And so I went and did it, and ended up walking on the football team there.
Oh, wow.
My first semester.
Your wife, was she in Idaho with you, or did you guys have a long distance during this time?
We hadn't gotten married yet, but we kind of knew it was in the cards. She came up with me when I moved back up, and basically I took her to the Spokane airport because that's how Moscow is like 2 hours away from the nearest airport is Spokane. And so I took her to the airport, and we were sitting down waiting for her flight, and we just kind of looked at each other and said, "This is just dumb. Let's just get married." And so that whole semester was me at college, waiting for her to come up. And I had walked on the football team, and it was not too bad when I was by myself. I did all right in school. And about, 2 months into it, I realized on the football team that I was this, I'm 6'3". I was, probably 260 pounds. I was an offensive tackle. And this guy that's lining up across from me, or I'm competing for his spot, was 6'3", 6'7", 350 pounds.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's it. I'm done. And then I ended up not doing very well in school, and I started to go work for this tire company that I was working part-time at this tire company and going to school full-time. And then I ended up working part-time or going part-time to school and working more part-time at the tire company.
Mm-hmm.
And ended up quitting school because I failed. Like I flunked out. I had like a 1.67 GPA in a year
Mm-hmm.
and a half. And I was like, I just can't do this. I'm not a good student, which
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, but I don't think I was trying very hard either.
Mm-hmm.
And so
telling yourself you weren't a good student, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
You know, and I mean, I paid for that because I did go back to college, and I paid for that in the end. I worked at Les Schwab for 11 years, in and out of a bunch of different stores. I was back and down in California for a little while, and then I was in Nevada, and then I was back in Boise, and I injured myself. I hurt my knee because that company, you know, we run to your car. That was kind of the deal. And we were running in the bays, and we were on concrete all day long. And I'm a bigger guy and ended up hurting my knee. I'm actually getting it replaced in November. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a big thing. So you really hurt it. Oh,
yeah. It's been, I had this Band-Aid surgery about 10 years ago that was like, because, you know, 30 years old, they don't want you to replace it. 40, they don't want you to replace it. But,
but it's that bad. Oh,
but it's going to happen. So, yeah. But anyway, at that point, I was like, I have two choices. The doctor says, you know, you quit doing this physical job that you are running around every day, or you get your knee replaced, you know, sooner. And I said, well, that's it. I applied for school. I went to Boise State and started going into athletic training, and physical therapy was the hope. And then I realized, because I had slacked off so much the first time, I had to go back and start at like the very lowest math they had. And
yes. Yeah.
people don't understand that athletic trainers have to take tons of math.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they do. Like, and I'm not talking about like a personal trainer. I'm talking about the athletic trainer, the guy who's on the field, who's like the medical guy for the team.
Okay.
And so they have to have a lot of math. And I got through as much as I could, and I just was like, man, this is just too much for me. And I decided, well, I'm going to go into education. I'm going to be a physical education teacher. They were pretty close to hand in hand. And once I switched to that, it was like, I want to go teach. I want to make difference in people's lives. That's kind of what I wanted to do. So I graduated in 4 years, which a lot of people. Can I ask
how you did?
How did I do? So,
yeah.
Okay. So remember I told you I had a 1.67 GPA, right?
Yeah. I
graduated with my bachelor's degree with a 3.6.
That's awesome. Amazing. Yeah. See, that's just, you know, what we tell ourselves is very impactful. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I was very proud of that. And, you know, and then I got my first teaching job. And while I was teaching, I ended up getting my master's degree while I was teaching. So
awesome.
Yeah. So I taught for 4 years, and I actually I had a 3.9 in my master's. I had one teacher who did not like the way that I wrote, so she gave me a B. It was the only B I got. I was so mad.
It's subjective. You know what? Yeah. I find all those English classes, you know, I had an English teacher that was, we won't go into that, but it's subjective. We'll just say that.
And if they're a technical writer and they're asking you to write something like super technical, but they don't know how to convey that, I mean, it's with anything. It's with anything in education, that if you can't convey it to the person, or you can't teach it to a different person a different way that they understand it, then you just kind of get frustrated.
Yeah, with communication, it's very important. You know, you have to be able to communicate what it is you're looking for in order to get it. Yes. So I'm curious. So you got your master's. Is that when you became a physical education teacher and then a coach as well?
No, I actually taught. So while I had my bachelor's, I taught PE for 4 years. Well, I taught PE for 3 years, because 1 year I had to teach out of class in order to get to be a high school PE teacher was what I wanted. I started out at a middle school and I wanted to be a high school teacher. Well, this job came open in a high school that was one that I wanted to work at. It was in the town where I lived, but I was driving 30 minutes to go teach in the other town. And he said, there's not a PE job here right now, but we have this advisory class that you can teach, which basically was junior and senior project. Because they had this really cool project that they all hated, but I thought it was awesome because it taught them how to write a resume. It taught them how to do college essay. I mean, it taught them all these
Love
things. And
it.
it was a portfolio that they could take and show to their own employer. You know,
that's
and say,
what they need to be doing in school. Yes. I applaud that.
Nothing but a fight. Nothing but a fight. I mean, so it was such a big fight that the administration changed the next year. And when it changed, he cut the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
Like they had so much invested in it, and he cut it.
Because that really is valuable. Oh, that's brutal.
He's like, I don't know what to tell you, but I don't have a job for you next year.
Yeah.
Not yet. And then I got lucky because they added a teacher. They added a PE teacher, but then I didn't get that one because with schools, they have this order of, like the guy from the middle school wanted to come up to the high school. Mm-hmm. So it was like still no place. So I applied for the middle school job, didn't get it. And then they decided they needed to add another PE teacher to the high school, and I got it.
They brought you that on. Nice.
Yep. So I did that year. And while I just finished my master's and I was done, I couldn't do it anymore. There was just too much wrong with the education system. And
I have so much to say on that topic. Yes. Yep. I'm curious though, because teaching in the middle school, let's be honest, that's not the easiest years to be teaching, right? I mean, it's, there's a lot going on at that age. And I'm curious though, did you have any takeaways from that experience that, anything that you learned from that experience that's helped you in life?
I mean, I think that everything has. It's funny because I do a Instagram live every Wednesday. It's called One Drink Wednesday. A friend of mine from Arizona and I get on Instagram and we pour ourselves a glass of bourbon or have a drink or whatever, and we talk.
I love it.
And we invite people onto the stage to talk, ask us questions. We sometimes have guests and things like that. And last night, one of my baseball players from the high school jumped on. He's in Japan. He's in the Army. And I had to write a letter of recommendation for him. He tried to get into the Marines, and I wrote a letter of recommendation for that, but he had a shoulder injury, and they weren't going to let him in. And he ended up getting into the Army. And last night they asked him what kind of coach I was, and he just like, to be honest with you, he was the best coach I ever had.
Oh wow!
And I was just
Isn't that amazing?
I almost started crying.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that is so you don't realize the impact that you have on other people and how that, and that stays with them. And you have no idea, but to hear that and to get that validation, that time and effort that you were putting in, that these people are carrying that around with inside of them. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
And it was really cool. But, I mean, to tell you that, it was one of those things, though. I was very structured. He said that I was very stern because that's how I was. And when I came into the middle school, I did not want to be a middle school teacher. I told everyone, I was like, I'm going to be an elementary school teacher, which I didn't want to do, or I'm going to be a high school teacher. And the only job I could find, middle school. So I think that things happen for a reason. And I got put there, and I was in a crummy situation before because the PE teacher was, at Boise State, they have a really good PE program. They really believe in teaching kids skills that they can use for the rest of their lives. PE is about movement. It's not about just rolling the ball out. And the guy that I followed was a roll the ball out guy.
Gotcha.
He would come into the classroom every single day. The kids would come in and they'd change if they wanted to. He wouldn't grade them on dressing down. The locker room was a disaster. And I am this very structured person. And so I'm like,
that would not fly.
This is not going to happen. I checked you out of lock. You have a locker. You're going to change your clothes. You're going to put them in that locker. And it got to the point where it wasn't like punishment, but like the first like month I had my door was rotating. Like kids were coming in and they were leaving. And if they didn't like the way that I was teaching, they would just leave. And the counseling program was like, it's okay. They didn't want to be in there. I'm like, whatever. So that year was pretty crummy. But
wow. I mean, to me, that just seems like standard. Yes, you have to dress down. Yes, you have to be participating. That kind of blows my mind that was optional.
That's how bad the PE teacher that was there was before.
Wow. Yeah.
And so the very next year, my second year there, it was completely different. Like the kids knew who I was. The 8th grade kids were gone, and then the 6th grade kids come up, and they're still 6th graders are funny because they're scared. Every place I've ever taught, like the seniors and the 8th graders think that they're the cat's meow and they don't have to listen and they know everything. And it's kind of funny, but The eighth grade kids were really good that year because they knew who I was. They knew what I was about. They wanted to be in my class because they had me the year before. And same thing with, the younger kids. So long story short, I should have stayed there. I probably would have been much happier if I stayed there. I'd probably still be teaching, but I really like what I do now. I mean, I really like more than just selling window coverings. I do a lot more. Like I've always been that person who wants to take the next step, and currently in my situation where I'm at right now, there's not really a next step other than to make more money, to work harder, to make more money, to make more sales, because that's what my job is. It's 100% commission based. And when I quit, that's what I did. I went back to becoming, I went back to sales because at Les Schwab, when I was working there, I was selling tires and servicing them and doing all that stuff. And I went back to sales. And with that mentality, I'm making a lot more money. Money's not everything, but on the same token, it does help to get some of the things that I want to do, and it doesn't hurt when I have this podcast that I do. When I want to buy a new microphone, I can afford that. I mean, those are the type of things that are nice. But I mean, I'm always looking for more. Like, am I going to own my own business? Am I going to take this podcasting platform to something that's bigger than what it is? Can I do, the things that I'm happy with where work isn't work anymore,
right.
Where it's just showing up and having a good time.
Yeah. And clearly you're confident in your work because you have to be if you're in a position that is commission only. Yeah.
Oh, and it's definitely, that was like the biggest barrier at first too, because I wasn't making very much money as a teacher. Like, I mean, if anyone's teaching, it's because I don't know, I have two thoughts on that. One, because they want to have the summer off and they don't want to work very hard. The other one is because they want to make a difference in people's lives. And I feel like it's about a 50-50 mix. I mean, I've seen these people that I work with and, I don't want to say it's easy because it's not easy. If you're really involved and you're a really good teacher, you're busy all the time and you need that summertime off because you got 30 kids that are, well, my classrooms are bigger than that because PE is always bigger. Like I had some classes with 40 in it, but these English teachers, these math teachers, they got 30 kids in their classroom and trying to keep track of each one and changing a lesson plan for each one to help them. If they're really involved and they're a really good teacher, it's a tough job.
It is a tough job.
Yeah. But if they're just there, just hanging out, passing out grades, that's a whole nother story. And I've seen both sides of that.
You've seen both. Yes, I agree. I have as well. And no, I mean, you've done a lot. You've different things throughout your career, and you have a lot of goals. It sounds like, which I want to talk to you about as well. Yeah. But I'm curious, what do you feel has been your greatest success to date, or one or two of your greatest successes to date, and what did you learn from it?
I mean, like that baseball player saying that last night, that's a success to me. That's, I mean, I've always had this, my podcast is called Shaping Success because I feel like success is really defined by you. But for me, it's like making that difference in someone's life. And that's why I do that's why I do the podcast, because I can't really change someone's life selling them a nice set of shutters, but I can have a conversation with them. I can talk to them. I can get to know them. That's a really cool thing about my job. I don't try to just go in and like, hey, let me measure your windows and pick something out. I try to, get to know people, which has helped with some really good connections. Yes. But I just think making a difference. And that's what I like about my podcast is that's what I'm doing with it. It's like, I get to interview people, once a month. I interview 4 people. Or hopefully 4 people, I try to get 4 people and I get to talk to them about what they're doing and how they got there. And to me, it's like, I feel really good about that because I get to learn something myself. Yeah. And I think it's sometimes I'm like, oh, this is pretty selfish because it's for me, It's so inspiring, isn't it? It is, but it's fun. It's like, there's that one person who said, hey man, I heard that episode with so-and-so and that's just awesome. Spot on. Good job. And that's what it is. It puts that smile on your face when you know that you've done something that changed someone's life. Yeah, so. I completely agree. And what was your motivation for starting the podcast? It's really weird because I had, like I told you, I was in a kind of a weird spot when I quit working or when I quit teaching. I started the day after school got out and I had my contract for the whole summer, but I was going into this job knowing that I had 100% commission. I wasn't going to make any money. And so I started reading and listening to some books because a friend of mine who actually his dad runs my podcast, but he was talking, he's like, you need to read this book. You need to read this book, and let's get you some advertising on social media. We'll see if we can get you some more business for that, because a lot of what we work on is like repeat business or direct leads. We get paid more for what we do, but the company will also get me leads. So it was kind of a selfish, just like, I need to make sure that I have at least the amount of money that I was making when I was teaching. But the whole idea for me quitting teaching was to make more so that I could put myself in a better financial situation. Because with that 4 years of school or 8 years of school came 8 years of student loans that I got to pay back. So, that was kind of my motivation to get that going. But then I thought, I'm going to start this podcast, and it was kind of a selfish type deal. I was like, I'm going to interview local business people, and I'm going to get them on my side, and then they're going to call me and they're going to refer me to sell people window coverings. That was the whole thing behind it. And it was weird because I started I was doing that, and then I started listening I read Gary Vee's book, and I don't know if you know who Gary Vee is, but
yes, love him.
Yeah. So he's talking. Yeah, I read, it was Crushing It. I was supposed to get Crush It, but I got Crushing It. And I was reading that, and I was going through there, and he was talking about all these things you need to be doing so that you can create this presence to sell your brand, which a brand for me is me, like I'm the brand. So I want people to say, when they see Blind Appeal, which is where I work, call Wes. And so what I was doing was like, I started doing some videos on Instagram, how these products work, a bunch of, just getting on there and chatting and talking. And I started to have like this discovery about myself that like, I was this person who was kind of this cocky jock when I was in high school. I didn't really talk to anyone. I was kind of to myself. I did my own thing. People were partying, and I wasn't that person. I wasn't very social. And I always thought I was a introvert. Turns out I'm like way the opposite. I'm an extrovert, like to the max. And it's so weird, but I never thought that, because I always thought that like, I go to a party, like, or I'm at a, anything, I'm just like over in the corner by myself. I don't like talking to people if I don't know them. I don't like to kind of interact with, and then once I get to know you, then it's like everything's opened up and we can chat.
You're an introverted extrovert.
Yeah, it's weird. It's definitely weird. But I have always been this also, which the last 2 years, because that's how long I've been doing this, has been completely different from me. I've always been the glasses half empty guy, not the glasses half full. And I started to realize that it was really making me feel negative about everything that I was doing. Like why does so-and-so get this? And why does so-and-so get that? And why am I not making this much? And why am I not, like there was just so many reasons of why everyone else was getting whatever. And I had to look within myself, and I realized that once I did, I needed to flip that switch. And it's not easy. My wife's like, this guy, he sits on there and he talks on this podcast, and he's in here yelling, and it's like, I'm still human, I'm trying.
I understand this.
I'm trying very hard, and it's not easy, but I've gotten to the point where I don't think about what other people are doing. I think the competitive side of me always wants to compete with the next person. And I realize that if I compete with myself, it's more fulfilling than competing with someone else. So that's kind of one of the things that I learned, that and through that. And then I realized that, I don't need to interview people to get them to buy things from me. And the first 3 or 4 interviews I did, I realized that it was more about me interviewing people to find out what they're doing, And I really liked Lewis Howes's podcast, and I thought, man, I could do that too, but I could do it with ordinary people, Yeah. And that's kind of where it all started. It was just like, here's these ordinary people, and I'm doing this podcast. And then it's just, I've met a few people in a podcasting group, and my friend Jay Finning and I started doing One Drink Wednesday together, and we've been talking to each other. Like, he lives in Arizona and I live in Idaho, and I've been down there twice just because we went down there for Thanksgiving last year, and then I ended up going down there to go golfing with my brother-in-law, and we hung out. Like, it's really cool. And
you met him through podcasting.
I met him through podcasting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We had this group. We're the Justice Avengers, because I like the Justice League and they like Marvel. So we have this little mastermind group for like 6 months. There was 4 of us in there just chatting all the time, like just talking about what we're doing with our podcast and how we can make it better. And just, it was great. And
that's great.
unfortunately,
making
two of
friendships
those,
through your hobby.
it was. And I've interviewed all of those people that were in that group. And unfortunately, a couple of them just kind of got busy and they're still doing it, but they're not as active as that. But I talk to Jay every single day and we always just challenge each other to be better. And he's got if you haven't ever listened to his podcast, it's called Hard Parking Podcast. It's a little different. It's a non-automotive podcast. And he has like the best sound I've ever heard. And he has
very interesting,
really good content, but he was the sound guy. And, like through mine, I have the video, like I have the capability of helping other people, do the show like mine if they want to. And then we had a Army Navy vet in there that has a podcast, and then another guy who's a pro baseball player in Germany that we just all talked all the time. So it's been super fun.
Great. Yep. It just expands your world and to share in something that you really enjoy doing with other people who are doing it. That just, it's incredibly rewarding. And like you said, you each lift each other up and help each other get better and better. And so I think that's fantastic.
That's another thing that I never really thought about, like one of the things that I think about now, like when I was younger, it was like, it doesn't matter how hard you work or how much you do. It's who you know. Like that's always been one of those things, like it's who you know. And I don't quite feel that way anymore. I feel like I'm going to work hard and people are going to see that. But on the same token, I do need to make those interactions. I do need to know those people. I need to know people like you. I need to know people like Jay. I need to know people so that we can make those connections and things happen when you're good to other people and other people are good to you. I mean, it just
completely.
That negative
Magic
attitude though.
There.
That
like
you get in that negative space and you try to find everything negative and you live this negative life. You never see the good side. So I've challenged myself to find the good in every bad situation, even because there is some good in that.
That's so powerful. And it changes the way you go through life, right? I mean, it eases life, if you will, to look at life that way and find the good, continuously look. So you know what? Bad is going to happen. There's no way around it. Change is consistent. And so it's up and down. Life is up and down. It's a constant roller coaster.
Right.
And how you deal with those ups and downs will dictate what your life is like.
Yeah.
So good for you for working on that. And like you said, it is a practice. It is something that we're constantly working on. I mean, we all like take a step back and then it's all about just, taking more steps forward.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely, it's not easy. I mean, that's the only thing I can say is like people just, you always think that like people are like, oh, look, why is he so happy all the time? And it's like, you have to choose to be happy. It doesn't just happen for you. You got to choose to do it.
Exactly.
It's a choice.
Yeah. So what about a time that you had a big struggle? I mean, like a perceived failure or a really big mistake or an obstacle and how you overcame it. And then what did you learn from it?
It's funny because I've had a lot. And when you asked me, is anything off the table? Like I was sitting there going, what's off the table? And I think about like all the things that have happened to me in my career and along. I had one instance that lost me my job. I've never I've never been fired before, but I lost my position as an assistant manager at Les Schwab when I was in California because I said something to someone I probably shouldn't have said to him. And I grew up in this company that was in the Northwest, really hardcore, and we all worked our butts off and we all joked with each other and we all said, whatever we wanted to say. And I said something to the wrong person and I ended up losing my position for that. And that was one of the toughest. Yeah, it was tough. It was very hard. And I don't talk about it very often because it just doesn't, I feel like I was still wronged, but I also now know that happened for a reason, I wasn't in the right place. I wasn't supposed to be there. I needed to do something different. I needed to be more challenged. And I think that, faith plays a big part in that too. And like realizing that, it's not your plan is not your plan.
No, these things happen. They do happen. And I do believe that. I believe that the universe nudges you, and people get fired for reasons that may not be valid for being fired. And it feels horrible. It's a horrible feeling. But to to take that experience, to learn from it and to overcome from it can add a lot of depth and value to your life.
Yeah. And it definitely was. It was crazy. Like, I mean, it wasn't even, it sounds like it was really bad, but it was, I called a guy fat, basically, is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
He called me that. I called him that. It came time for me we weren't doing very good at our store. We had to lay someone off. He was the person who was going to get laid off. And it turned into, well, you said this, and that was it. They couldn't. And in California, laws are a little bit stricter than they are down here. Like, I mean, or in Idaho. Idaho's a right to work state. I'm pretty sure California's not.
Anyone can anytime.
Yeah. And that changed the structure of our company. You know, our company wasn't always that way, but as we get into California, it seems like the more regulations you have on things, it becomes across the board. So they become stricter everywhere, no matter what the policy is. And should I have called the guy fat? No, but he called me that. I thought at the time I was just joking around, and he was joking with me. But then, you know, when you have to be the authoritative person, you know, it could turn on you. But you know what? You know, look where I am now. And that's what I learned. It's like, I don't have, that doesn't define me. That doesn't mean that that's who I am. I had two choices. I could have just like went and got unemployment and just kind of tried to figure it out and not do anything, or I could go find someone else that I knew, find a connection that I knew, get a job at another store and start working again and trying to work my way back up. And before I quit, I was back on the list to be an assistant manager again. And I was just like, I proved that I could do it to myself, and my knee got hurt. And I'm like, I'm done. I don't need to do this anymore. I fulfilled what I thought I could. I got back to where I needed to be. And that was it. I proved it to myself.
And sometimes that's what you need to do, right? Sometimes it is just about proving it to yourself so you can feel that internally and move on.
Yeah.
To the next stage.
You get to that point where you think that you're like, you're not good enough, right? Because you lost your job because you're not good enough. And I was able to prove that I was still as good as I was before. And it just, you know, I just had to get
and that's so important, because when these things, okay, look, there's so many people out there who have experienced this. This has happened to so many of us. I mean, it happened to me once too. And we talked about it on your podcast.
Yeah.
So, you know, so these things, they happen, and they feel awful in those moments. They really do. And I've talked to a lot of people that have allowed those moments to make them bitter and to allow it to erode them and go down a negative path. And that is very human. It's a very human, normal thing, but it is so important to pick yourself up, remind yourself of all the amazing things that make you, you, all the great things that you've done, all of that stuff. You just want to remind yourself, write it all down and feel it all internally, and then move forward with that good feeling. And that's how you move forward. And honestly, there's a lot that you can learn from that whole process.
And I really think, you know, a good friend of mine was talking about this too. And I really think, and like, it makes a lot of sense to me. She was talking about how she is not good with dealing with failure. And I'm like, what do you mean? I don't look at failure as like the end. I think that failure happens when you quit. Like when you quit trying, you fail. Like you look at like vaccines and stuff like that. It's kind of one of those deals where that scientist sat in there and made 5,000 different things, and he found the one combination that worked, that stops polio, right? Or that stops the mumps, or stops chickenpox, or whatever. Scientists do that all day long. They test their theory over and over again, and that's all we're doing. We're testing a theory.
Yeah.
You know, and if we do really well, then we're good. If we don't, then we don't. People fail, but when they quit, when they're done, when they stop trying, that's the failure.
Yes.
You know,
and that's when you feel the regret too.
Yeah.
That's when it feels the hurt, because it's not the things that we do that we regret. It's the things that we don't do, or that we gave up on doing.
Yep. Exactly.
So, you know, how have you pushed through your worst times? Is there anything that's helped you push through difficult times?
You know, my wife is very helpful. You know, she's always been very supportive of me. You know, that helps, having a good support system. It's funny because one of the things that when I read that book, Crushing It, like the really thing that's helped me through everything in the last 2 years is just listening to that positive message, like finding that positive person. So I really like listening to Lewis Howes. I really like listening to people talk about positive things, like how they created their success, because I think it just shows, you know, that's what it is. So reading, being around people who are successful, surrounding yourself with like-minded people. I think that people think that like-minded people, when I say that, because I did an episode on that too. It's like, they think that like-minded people means you all agree. And I think the biggest thing for me is that we don't all agree. I don't care if we don't all agree. The biggest problem we have right now in this country is that there are so many differing opinions. And just because you have a different opinion than me, I can't get along with you, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the things. It's like, find those people. It doesn't, like-minded doesn't mean you believe in everything the same. It means that you're going to challenge each other to be better every single day. And you're going to question that, you know, what they say, and you're going to ask them, and you're going to have an open dialogue about it so we can get somewhere. And I feel like we too much now. It's like, nope, I'm done. I'm not going to hang out with you. You don't like marshmallows. I do. You know, I mean, it just, there's all these dumb reasons for things to be the way they are. And I think that that's one of the biggest things, is just making sure you have a good support group, a good core of people that you can always go back to. I mean, my two best friends are my two best friends. We've been best friends since I was 13. You know, I talk to one of them today. I don't talk to him as much as I talk to the other one, but you know, we talk all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just finding that core.
You do need that core. And you're right. And we do need to understand each other and be open to each other, regardless if we have differing beliefs. We need to learn from each other and try to come to understandings.
Yep. And it's hard because, you know, I mean, the world is pretty dang negative, and negative things sell. Positivity
and negative breeds negativity. You know, it breeds itself, and it grows and continues. And when you're faced with a lot of negativity coming at you, it's you know, like I said, it makes you negative. It's like you have to work at keeping that positivity in the face of it, if you will. And it is work. It's again, a practice.
It is. Yeah. I feel like every time I'm like, yeah, it's work. It is definitely work. It gets easier, but you still have to work on it.
Yeah. Have you ever felt stuck in life?
I don't think that I mean, you get there. Like, sometimes you feel that way, right? Like, I feel like that way for like a day or so, you know, but not really. Like, I mean, I know that I'm not stuck. I know that I'm in charge of whatever, you know. If I don't like my job, if I don't like a situation that I can just walk away. I have that choice, or I can challenge it and try to be better at it. You know, I mean, there's a lot of, like I told you, like there's a lot of animosity when you try to challenge yourself to be better than someone else. Like being in sales, my number one goal is to beat the guy who's the top salesman in our company. Right. And then I infatuated myself on that so much that I'm just like tunnel vision towards doing that. And then every time he'd have a better month than me, I was seeing these numbers and I'm like, this is not, I'm working harder. I know I'm working harder, you know, like, and it just, once I stopped worrying about that, and once I started thinking, well, I'm going to do better this month than I did last month. And I'm going to do better this year than I did last year. That's when the stuckness is gone. I mean, life is that way though. Like I said, like there's no, even with the negative things that happen, life is that way. Like there are times where you feel like this is not, the podcast, I've really felt like that a couple of times. I'm like, man, this isn't going anywhere. And then I just sit there and I'm like, well, what if I quit doing this right now? How am I going to feel tomorrow?
Right.
Did I really try hard enough? What if I interviewed the next big thing on the next interview, and that was the one that made me be the next, you know, Joe Rogan, Adam Carolla, you know, the next big podcaster, right?
Yes. I think that's an important question to ask yourself. How would I feel, you know, if I were to give up on this? How would I feel if I were to do this? How would I feel if I didn't do this? Yeah. That's a good question to be asking yourself.
And that's the thing. I couldn't live with myself. And that's the nice thing about having that other core group with this kind of thing is like, they're like, well, yeah, you know, I mean, we support you, whatever you do, but you know, think about this, you know, you have really good content. You have an audience, you're just building on it. And then you start thinking about it. And then I'll go and I'll listen to Lewis Howes talk about how he didn't get into it to get into what he's doing. He's got over 1,000 episodes and he's got a really big following and he has his own books out and he has all those things, you know, but it didn't happen overnight. And everyone thinks that I'm going to get a microphone and I'm going to get a camera and I'm just going to talk and it's just going to be, I'm viral, you know, like I'm the next big thing. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't work that way.
No.
So it has to be important to you. It goes back to your why and why you're doing this and how are you going to feel if you don't do it?
Yeah,
so,
exactly. That's the one thing that I tell myself. It's like, I've asked you, if you ever talk to my friend Jay, it's like, he's like, I asked Jay, how many times did you say that you're not going to do this anymore? How many times have you said that you're thinking about hanging it up? And he just like, you can, but think about it's one of those things. You need that person who's on your side that sees both sides, because sometimes you get that tunnel vision and you're like, this isn't going the way I want it to.
Yeah, well, exactly. And it's that, like you said, it's that what I want to do, what it should be, what I think it should be. I should be here. I should be there.
Yeah.
When it's really all about what you're saying, comparing yourself to where you were. What did I do last month? Who was I last month? Where was I? Where was I 6 months ago? Where was I a year ago? Oh, well, a year ago, did I have a podcast?
Well,
it's
funny.
A year ago. So.
I listened to this guy named Chad Wright on Lewis House's podcast talk about something that made a lot of sense to me. He's a ultra marathoner, former Navy SEAL. And he talked about running this race and how there is, like he does these like 100-mile races, and you're like, I don't run. I mean, my knee's messed up. I don't run. I hated running before my knee was messed up. But he's like, he goes, all I can do is control what I can control. Mm-hmm. I look up in the front of me and I know that I have to get there. I know that I'm 100 miles away, but I look at this tree that's 100 feet away and I get to that tree. And then I look for the next thing that's going to get me to the next spot. And I just keep putting those things together. And next thing you know, I'm at the end of the race.
Mm-hmm. And you can apply that to anything. Yeah,
exactly.
It's perfect.
It's great. It gets you through whatever. When you want to quit, just like, okay, but can I go to that next tree? Mm-hmm. Can I go that next 10 feet?
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So where can people find you? If people are interested in listening to your podcast, or if someone's interested in window coverings in your area, how can they find you?
Yeah. The best place really is to reach out to me on Instagram. I do most of my social media from Instagram. I have a Podspout app. You can click on that. That'll take you. I do a live show, or it's not live. Used to be live. I keep calling it a live show. Used to be live. We record it live, but it gets posted at a later date. It's kind of like Jimmy Fallon. It's like recorded earlier, and broadcasted right now. But yeah, so it has that. You can look to the shows. You were on my show. So that's
it was
up on.
A pleasure too. Thank you.
It was super fun. Yep. I'm always excited to talk to people who are in the same kind of mindset. So, but yeah, my Instagram handle is at Wes, Wes.Tankersley, Tankersley. And I spell it because it's a big, long English name and people get it wrong. But
we'll include it in the show notes too.
Yep. That's where you can find me. DM me. I'm always looking for good guests. I'm always looking for the next career or whatever, to talk about how people have been successful, because again, it's different for everyone. You define it.
You define it.
People don't define it for you.
I completely agree. Thank you. So last question before we go, Wes, what are you sure of in life?
What am I sure of in life? Mm-hmm. Wow. I've never been asked that before.
It's my favorite question.
I know. You got to think about it a little bit. I'm sure that I will do everything I can in my power to do the best at everything that I do, no matter what.
Awesome. Oh, that's a great answer.
I'm sure.
Thank you so much for joining us, Wes. This has been great.
Yeah. Thank you.
This Father's Day, I'm honoring the story of someone who spent time as a teacher and as a coach, just like my own father, who I miss dearly. Happy Father's Day to all of you fathers out there. Now, right off the bat, Wes's story gives us an important lesson: to be mindful of how you speak to yourself. Wes went to college, and after a bit, he began to struggle in school. Now, when you're a young person, a teenager going away from home to school for the first time, there are likely a lot of different reasons that you might find yourself struggling. But when Wes struggled and he found himself getting these poor grades, he started to tell himself that he was not good enough. He started to tell himself that he just was not a good student. And he began to believe it. He began to believe that he really wasn't good enough. What you tell yourself, the words you use, the thoughts you focus on, those will define you. Those thoughts will create your reality. Wes's thoughts that he was not good enough created his own reality, and he ended up dropping out of college. Now, after spending time doing sales for a tire company, Wes hurt his knee, and he hurt it badly. It was so bad, he was told he had to find a new career. So Wes decided to go back to school. He stopped telling himself that he could not do it, and he started telling himself that he could. And what happened? His first round with college as a teenager produced a 1.6 GPA. The second time around, he produced a 3.6 GPA, and then in his master's, a 3.9 GPA. Same brain, same person, different mindset. How are you talking to yourself? What are the words you use to describe yourself? Your thoughts, your words have power over your reality. You are creating your personal world with your thoughts. So I ask you, are you empowering yourself with your thoughts? If you aren't, you can change this. You start with the decision to make the change. Then every time you become aware of the negative thoughts, do not judge yourself. Never judge yourself. Only become aware and then consciously change those thoughts. You force the happy thought. You force the happy picture. Visualize it. Do this over and over and over again. Best case scenario, best outcome. Force that thought, force that visualization. This is a practice. It will be hard at first, but the more you do it, the easier and more natural it will become, just like anything else you learn. Do what Wes suggests and challenge yourself to find the good in every situation, including yourself. You deserve to be your biggest cheerleader. Wes went on to teach and coach for a number of years, inevitably making a big impact on the world around him. Teachers make endless ripples that they will never see, that they will never be aware of. And these ripples absolutely turn into waves. Teachers are one of the most impactful, important roles in our society, yet they are one of the most underpaid and undervalued. It's one of the really big things wrong with this country, and we desperately need help to fix it. I want to give a really big thank you to all of you hardworking teachers out there. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Now for Wes, one of his most successful moments came from this time, making a big impact as a coach. And he had a former player randomly come on to his Instagram Live to tell him how important Wes's role was in his life. Wes shared how meaningful that moment was for him. Who has played an important role in your life like that? Have you let them know? Think about the impact you could make in their life by saying thank you now. What a beautiful loop of positive feelings. Who can you call today and change their day with a big thank you? Now, something I really loved about what Wes shared is that he is always asking himself, what does he want? He's always asking himself, is this what I want? Can anything be better? Is there something I would rather be doing every day? If so, how can I get myself there? These are such important questions. These are the questions we should constantly be asking ourselves, not just when we're graduating high school or college, not only when a big shakeup forces us to face our life in a different way, but every year there should be a deep dive check-in. How am I really doing? How do I want to be doing? And then make the plans to get there. Wes made the decision to move back into sales, and he now has a successful career selling window coverings. Along the way, he learned a couple of important lessons. First, he found himself competing with other salespeople. He would try to beat the best salesperson and focus on that, right? How can I beat that person? What are they doing? How can I do it better? But this never seemed to work or really help him get better. Then Wes learned that universal secret, that the only person worth comparing yourself to is who you were the day before. Wes started competing with himself. How could he make himself better? How could he have a better day than the day before? How could he have a better month than the month before? This method gave him the result that he was looking for, and his sales skyrocketed. But the best part, for him, life was so much more fulfilling. Keeping your focus on yourself, on what you are doing rather than what others are doing, is a winning recipe for life. So ask yourself, where is your focus? Second, Wes realized he could still make a difference in people's lives by getting to know them, by having genuine curiosity, and taking the time to have good conversations with the people he runs into day in and day out. Making strong connections absolutely makes a positive difference in this world, and anyone can do that anytime, anywhere. So how are you showing up to the people around you? Are you reaching out with your own curiosity and making those strong connections? Wes enjoys that aspect of life so much that he started his podcast to make those connections, having strong conversations and learning with all kinds of different people. Through the production of his podcast, he's connected with a podcast support group that meets to share tips, support each other, and lift each other up. This is so important in all aspects of life, and we all need a small support group comprised of like-minded people. And I love and appreciate Wes's definition here. This is what's important. Like-minded people are not people who all have the same exact beliefs. Like-minded people are people willing to help challenge you to be a better person each and every day. Like-minded people are people who want to come together, learn from each other, and create something better. We all need a group of like-minded people, and I hope you are on the path to finding yours. I will leave you with a final piece of insight from Wes. When you are working towards something that you really want, and it's not quite going exactly how you had hoped, before you give up, ask yourself, how will it feel to give up on this dream? If I quit this now, how will I feel in a few months or a year, a few years? How will I feel on my deathbed? The answers will tell you what you need to know. And if you need to keep going and you need help to keep going with a goal, remember the racer's advice. How he would not focus on the end of the race, but just getting to that next tree and then the next. Break the big goal into much smaller baby steps. Make your way from one baby step to the next baby step, and you'll get yourself to where you want to be. And that is my wish for you all, that you find the way to baby step yourself to the life that feels happy, successful, and fulfilled. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on Fresh Blood. Please subscribe and follow us on all streaming services, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Player FM. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Fresh Blood Podcast. I would love your help in spreading these stories and important messages. Please give us a like and share with a friend. Your help is greatly appreciated. I hope you make today a most fulfilling day.